All right, so the last thing I'm going to do here is take some of those commands we built and bind them to a button. So we were in the intake subsystem. We have our commands. We've got load and we have purge. Those are the two commands we've created. I'm going to go to robot container. This is sort of the code that includes all the subsystems. This is where we put the intake and the chassis and the shooter and all that together as a robot. So within robot container, you can see that the first thing we do is we say, well, what does the robot have? You can see this example here where we have the example subsystem. So we need to now tell the robot, hey, you've got an intake. So we'll do private final intake subsystem. And we're going to call our intake subsystem m underscore intake subsystem. And it is a new intake subsystem. All right, so we have to say, hey, this robot has an intake. All right, you can see not only do we have the example subsystem, which is already here, they've already included an Xbox controller within our robot called mDriver controller. And if we keep scrolling down, there's this part here that says private void configure bindings. So you see, it gets called here under robot container. But what does configure bindings do? Well, we can see here an example where they bind to run a subsystem on a specific trigger. So this schedules example command when the example condition changes to true. This one schedules example method command when the Xbox controller B button is pressed. So we're gonna try to do something like this second version here. Let's say that we want to run intake when our right trigger is pressed. So mDriver controller dot, let's do, we got left trigger, right trigger. We also have the bumpers. Let's tie this to the bumper. Let's do right bumper. So while true, so while the button is pressed, it is going to run the intake subsystem dot what did we call this? We called it load. Yep, there it is, load. Okay. Why does it not like right bumper here? Oh, I need to put those parentheses. Cool. So now it will look at the driver controller, and if the right bumper is pressed, while it's pressed, it will run load. When you release it, it will do that end condition. So remember our load command ended with stopping the motors, so it'll end there. It'll also end if we trigger the brake beams, because that is another end condition we created within the command itself. All right, now let's do one for purge. Let's purge with the left bumper. So mDriver controller dot left bumper dot while true. Our intake subsystem command purge. It's going to run. Cool. So now we have bound those commands that we created in this intake subsystem. We have bound them specifically to buttons in our robot container. Okay. Honestly, we can probably get rid of a bunch of these other example ones. I'm not going to mess with them right now. You will notice that when I first inserted the intake subsystem, it went yellow because I hadn't used it. But now that I've got some commands that it's bound to, you can see that it's cool and it used it. There is a folder here of commands. If you want to get more detailed with the way your commands are set up, you can create an entire command within its own file. We've been doing it more and more this way, where we create the commands within the subsystem, because they've got all these start end commands, they've got while commands, they've got all sorts of conditionals you can put around the command. But if you need to, you can actually build them very detailed here with an initialize and execute all these different, more specific things you can control the command. All right, so now that that's all done, I'm going to just finish here by trying to build the robot code and just making sure everything compiles. I think it's going to work. We will see.
All right, good morning.
Starts building. Everything looking good. It's taking a moment here. Okay, there we go. Build successful. So it likes the code. Now I'd upload it, and I would test those buttons to see if they behave as I want. All right, that's how you do a basic subsystem and make commands and bind the buttons to the robot.